up, guys? I'm Morpheus, and this is BQ, and we're here with the Gentleman's Agreement today. Just a quick introduction before we get into stuff. Um, I started playing Call of Duty. My first game was Modern Warfare 2, and I played on PlayStation 3, that shitty system, and
Mm.
we well, I guess Brandon wouldn't say that that's a shitty system, but uh, I started there probably halfway through, and I was super shitty. I never got a nuke in my entire time playing MW2. The easiest game to get a nuke in, I never got a nuke, but I got nukes in other games prior to that. So I was like bottom of the barrel. And as I started playing GB's Black Ops 1 with some school friends, and from there, just kind of played casually until Black Ops 4. We kind of played in like a little private kind of friends league. No money was involved, but that's where I kind of started my competitive journey in Call of Duty. And I've kind of been playing on and off from there, but I've always been in the competitive scene for all the games that I play. I started in 2012 is when my first competitive games, Counter Strike, and my highest rank there was LEM. So I was always super competing, FACEIT and ESEA and all the competitive stuff like that, playing in the open bracket and stuff like that. So I went from there, Valorant, Fortnite when that was super popular, however cringy that is, and Call of Duty has always been in my life, and competitive Call of Duty has always been a central part of what I do and what I like to do. And me and Brandon have, in the recent year or two, we've been more so Brandon than me, but keeping track of stats and I'm a computer science major, and I've been trying to get into data analytics and um, kind of deciphering what makes a team good, and possibly in the future making some sort of website or application for that sort of stuff. And with that, I will leave you with Brandon for his introduction.
Yeah, so I'm Brandon Qualkenbush. Most people just call me BQ. It's easier that way. Um, Started playing Call of Duty all the way back in Modern Warfare 1, Call of Duty 4. Back just playing in my mom's basement at the time with my oldest brother Austin, who I still play COD with almost every day till this day. Um, he had a PlayStation 3, and I didn't have one yet because I was probably 10 or 11 years old at the time. And we would just like split time on that PlayStation, and then eventually during that game, I got a PlayStation. And for whatever reason, from like that point on, all we did was play GBs. It was him, myself, and one of our uncles that we also still play with almost every day today. And ever since then, like I just only been into competitive COD. And like people I play with know because I say it all the time that I hate pubs. I do not play pubs
Hmm,
hardly ever.
true.
I've just always been about competitive. Um, yeah, it's been playing mostly game battles from like Call of Duty 4, the World at War, Modern Warfare 2, and then even Black Ops 1. And when Black Ops 2 came around, like I really got into competitive with the CWL at the time with teams like Farico Impact and Complexity, and I became like a really big fan of Parasite and that team and followed them for a few years. And ever since then, I've just been following competitive COD every season they've had. Been playing at like an amateur level myself a little bit, definitely like a low tier am because I don't have thumbs. But the reason why I've like stuck with comp is just because it's something I enjoy like breaking down. And in Black Ops 4, like halfway through the season, I actually took up coaching. And for the second half of that season, I coached an underage team for Carnage Gaming for like one of their affiliate orgs. And that was a lot of fun. Got to meet a lot of people. And I was planning on coaching in Modern Warfare, but that game was ass. So I did not want to coach in that. And I didn't want to learn the game well enough to teach people how to play it from at least from my perspective. So I didn't want to like go and try and like be fake about that and just not be a good coach. So the first half of that game, I really didn't do much from a competitive side until the CDL came around, and like a quarter of the way through their season, I actually started working with a website called rotorgrinders.com, which is like a daily fantasy sports advice website. If you think like DraftKings, FanDuel, stuff like that. they didn't have anyone writing Call of Duty stuff at that time. So through connections I built through like other communities I'm in, I was able to work with that website, and I wrote articles for every event for like the last 50-60% of the season. I enjoyed it a lot. I got to like communicate with people that were like, subscribers to my content, make spreadsheets like Amari was talking about, and yeah, it was really good. And after that one ended and this game came back around, I really enjoyed this game like right off the bat, even from like the beta or the alpha. Just like I could tell it to be a really good competitive game, and with 4v4 coming back, where like I originated with competitive Call of Duty, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna try and coach again. And it kind of aligned well because like I have things in like my college life that actually coincides with opportunities like this. So I threw my hat back in the ring, started coaching a team before the first 2K for a couple weeks. Then I moved on to another team, did a few 2Ks with them. And actually, right now, I'm like evaluating options, trying to get onto another team. But basically, all of that be said, that I really love competitive COD. I'm like a competitive person in my nature, just with everything in life. And yeah, and this podcast is something Amari and I have been talking about doing for like a year or two now, even. And we just like never got around to doing it. We always came up with like name ideas for the podcast, topic ideas, just talking about doing it, but we've never made it happen. And just a few days ago, one day I just was feeling super inspired, so I hit him up and I was like, let's make this thing happen. So a few days after that, we went over the structure of the show. And then now a couple days after that, we're recording today. And this show will be really good from a perspective of someone like myself who obviously not a professional level coaching yet, maybe in the future, but talking about the game from more of like an analytic perspective and from like a coach perspective. And while he's someone who like follows the league a lot and also plays competitively himself, so I think it'll be like a good split on that. And yeah, that's myself and that's the show.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. I definitely think that um, obviously it's not the show isn't super noob friendly when it comes to like knowing what Call of Duty actually is. So I mean we're gonna be speaking more from um like a more in-depth perspective. So if you don't know too much about Call of Duty, don't worry, it's super simple. There's a lot of platforms out there, and I know that the CDL has some real good videos on explaining the game modes and what exactly competitive Call of Duty is about. And with that, we can get into our first topic. Um, so we can talk about the season one, just kind of going over season one and our thoughts and maybe some key things in season one that might transfer over to season two. So here I have the season one rosters and the teams open right now. If you didn't know, or well, you should know. If you're watching this, you probably know. But the Dallas Empire won champs this year or last year, and Shotzi ended up being the season MVP. So yeah, obviously their roster of Clayster, Shotzi, Hugh, Illy, and Crimsix, one of like the most veteran, like the most veteran and raw talent, like balanced rosters, I'd
Mm-hmm.
say, with veteran talent in Clayster and Crimsix, and then your young guns Shotzi and Illy, and obviously Hugh the Nuke. He's always been nasty, so like he's gonna perform for you. It was just like that kind of like mystery in Shotzi and Illy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like they were kind of like a an unknown, like a factor you weren't ready for yet, and obviously Simp had a huge entrance into Black Ops 4, and he absolutely popped off and dominated. At least
Mm-hmm.
from a rookie's perspective, like you would not expect a rookie, especially someone that young, in a esport that I would say is dominated by a lot of older players. Like a lot of the players you see here have been in the league for quite some time. Like I remember
Mm-hmm.
hearing these players' names from like when I was playing like MW3 and like Black Ops
Yep.
2. Like these are names that we've seen for quite some time. So
Yeah,
That's
just like
definitely a
how
big thing.
I mentioned earlier, getting back or like getting into the competitive leagues that like Activision was holding back then. Like a bunch of these names are people who were around like even then, like Scump, of course, was around, Clayster, Crimsix on the complexity teams back then. And then you have guys like Saints, who's been around for a long time. Apathy's been around forever. Slacked has been around for a long time. Classic as well. Um, like Accuracy, Attach, Zuma have all been around forever.
Hmm.
Silly.
I
So
actually I remember seeing Black Ops 2 clip where Scump was actually playing with Dashi. Like
hmm,
Dashi was a child and he was playing in Black Ops 2 with Scump, and that just shows you like
crazy.
how deep this talent goes and how deeply ingrained Call of Duty is into a lot of these people's lives. They're just like they were born just around Call
hmm
of Duty playing it, and that's I mean that's probably what makes them so good, honestly. Like I
Yep.
bet Illy and Simp were probably playing like sub double digits. Like they were probably playing
Oh
like
yeah.
10 years old. They were playing Call of Duty, so they just grew up around it and
hmm
they learn they learn from the best. Like if you're surrounded by people who are already pros and you're learning from them, I mean, it's like having a professional coach with you at all times. So
Exactly.
that's definitely awesome. But so we kind of want to just we can go from like team to team and kind of talk about like
Yeah.
where they were at the beginning of the 2020 season, and then
hmm
kind of like where we see them now, or like at the end kind of, and before the 2021 season starts. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we
I can
start
start off
with
with
phase.
a few teams.
Yeah, go for it.
So with Phase, I think when their roster started coming together, like we knew Simp and Abizi were going to be a duo just because coming off Black Ops 4, they were just so dominant. And then ended up just falling in with guys like Celium coming off that Phase Black team, Major Maniac coming off of Gen G, and then Priest off the 100T team. Like right when that team got announced and everyone saw that team on paper, like you just knew it was going to be a great
Oh
team.
yeah.
Along with Crowder coaching them, because I actually one of the people who like inspired me to get into coaching. It's like listening to him like talk on other podcasts. Yeah,
Yeah.
like that team just like so much raw talent. Like when I was writing, I mean this is like halfway through the season, but
Mm,
like when I was writing my articles for each of the events, whenever like Atlanta would come up in their match, it just became redundant. Like I would say a Beezy, Simp, and Celium, like those are three of the top players in the league, and like for most teams, if you were to put them on any other team, like that could be that team's best player,
mm.
and it's like a cheat code.
You almost
Can link,
expect them to win, type of thing,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. Then like they had a great supporting AR in like Major Maniac, and then Priesta, who's known to be one of the best flex players like in the recent history. So it's just hard for them not to do well,
Yeah,
and
I
ended up
remember
crushing.
seeing this roster announced. I literally was like, it 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 didn't even make sense. It was like it's like the super team, you know what I mean? Like
hmm
the Warriors, like when they were when they were going through like obviously. So I'm not super into basketball, but the first year I didn't really know all of those names were super good. But then when
Yeah.
KD moved over to the Warriors and like that super team was like named and like they like kind of unlocked that name super team, like that's what this feels like. It feels like
Yep.
they just literally made an MVP team and then slapped FaZe logo right on
Yeah.
top, you know what I mean? So that was like super crazy.
Yeah. And we can go. It's actually funny because like all these teams on like the top row are just like basically the best teams from last season. And you just go into Chicago next, like all the fanboy teams
Yep.
that people love. And like Scump and Formal, like they came back together. That was one of the biggest storylines going into the season, and they both played like relatively well compared to how they have in the past. And Arcides, who someone I hold like really high up in
Mm,
like my AR rankings, he was great for that team to have. But like you kind of wondered with Formal and Arcides how that was gonna work. Then they actually started with gunless as well. So they had like three not main AR players, but three players who like heavily used the AR. So it was like curious to see how that was gonna work. And then Envoy, who was coming off Black Ops 4, playing with Gen G, who's like one of the best players that season. And yeah, that roster, they ended up moving on from gunless for whatever like personality reasons with the teams. It just didn't work out. And then they brought in Pristini, who have always seen as like a very high talent sub, just like super inconsistent.
mm.
But they brought him in again to play with Arcides, his twin, and then they ended up like doing like much better after that point. They picked him up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a
We've
good
I
team.
mean we've all heard gunless stories, of like of his temperament in game, his like coachability and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Is just like a good talent, just like kind of lost in himself. It
Mm.
from what we like hear. Obviously, I don't know too much coming from the outside, but I mean from just stories and testaments
Mhm.
from other pros, like just hearing like about him in like his in-game
Yep.
persona. It's like it's sad that hasn't been able to perform at like that level that everyone claims and like says that he can compete at. But like obviously he's shown glimpses of talent and glimpses of performing at a
Mhm.
high tier level. But it's just something that we hope we can see this upcoming season, at least from him.
Yeah. We'll try to go through the rest of these like somewhat quickly since
Mm,
it was last season, but like obviously Dallas, you talked about them a little bit at the beginning.
mm.
Just championship team, like you saw it on paper when they put the team together. Like Krim and Clayster, like two of the top 5 players of all time, and Halo, who was or Shotzi, who came over as like a Halo champion. Just everyone just raved about his mechanics and ended up being on Modern Warfare, like a pretty heavily like mechanics
Yep.
game. Then who just been nasty forever. Then Illy, who like most of the pros knew about coming up through the S&D scene.
Yep. S&D
It's
star.
crazy. And then Rambo is like another person who I guess like I don't know if idolize is like the right word, but someone I look up to in the competitive scene, especially early on when I first got into it. Just like how everyone always said he was such a smart player,
Yep.
and like when he was still playing, you could see it on the map. And then Florida, just another team. Yeah, they started with Mox over Awakening, then Havoc Skies, Frosty, and obviously rest in peace Pharaoh. It's unfortunate, but that team ended up playing super well. Definitely passed my expectations, and I think it passed most people's expectations as well. And they had Persini on the team over who was it? Over Pharaoh. Yeah,
Yep.
Persini and Mox over Pharaoh and Awakening. And when I with that 5, I wasn't ever sure how they would do. I just thought they'd be kind of an inconsistent team.
Hmm.
Like when they brought Pharaoh and Awakening in, that team just was nasty.
Yeah.
Like a team I wrote about all the time
Yeah. People
in my
literally
articles.
claiming that Awakening is cheating. That's
Oh
how
yeah,
good this guy's shot is. You know what I mean? Like
yep.
crazy.
Then
Then obviously your
with
boys.
yeah, with London. See the shirt I'm wearing right now. My boys Weskin and Scraps, love those guys. Met them at a event a couple times. Got to like to talk to them. They're really like cool people. Like how you see them like in their comms, like while you're watching matches or on Twitter, is how they are in person. They're really cool guys. And like I, those guys as talents, I think they're both great. Then with Dylan, this is coming off the Black Ops 4 season, so you saw Dylan on this team where he was like
Oh
a
yeah, the
top
crackhead
five,
dude.
top 3 talent in that. Yeah, like top 3, top 5 talent in that game. You just knew like he was going to be amazing,
Players were
which he
scared of him.
actually faltered a little bit, but yeah, just off of Black Ops 4, like his expectations were so high. Then Zero has just always been like a very solid player, especially in the jetpack games. He was like
Hmm.
one of the best. And Shawnee was always like a question mark for me, which I mean Jordan was in before him. But Shawnee was a question mark for me, but he actually proved himself well at the end that he was not a bad player at all. But yeah, then moving on to the LA Gorillas. Like this team finished how most people thought it would when they first saw it on paper with guys like Aches, Lacefield. I don't even remember the starting team of this. I think it was Aches, Lacefield, Saints, Aqua, Decimate. Like when you saw that team on paper, it was kind of like eh, and
Yeah,
they
that
ended up
was.
breaking up.
I mean,
Yeah, fairly quickly.
Ace
So
is like not. I mean, Ace is obviously he's the he claims the
he's a
boots
legend.
boots on the ground god, and back in the day, like he was. That's what he was. He was always like your everyone. I mean, if you're involved in the Call of Duty scene, like who Ace is,
Yep.
which I mean is just a testament to like how good he was and how good that he could be possibly in this next season. But I mean
Mhm.
I mean obviously it was kind of like a meme in the Call of Duty community, like. Aches was just a shitter. Like that's like dropping a .64, I think, at one of the
Yeah,
tournaments. Like initially, like that was just like unacceptable. And I get,
I
you can
agree.
talk all you want. Like when you're dropping those numbers, like you're asking to get put on the bench. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
nothing really you could do about that.
Yeah, the next Minnesota Rocker. When I first saw this team on paper too, it's kind of how I felt with Florida. Just like a bunch of guys that felt like they just happened to come together as a team, and like it wasn't really a by choice type thing.
Mm.
But they surprised me, especially with God X, who coming off the Black Ops 4 season, like the second half, he played really well, and a lot of people thought it was like a flash in the pan type thing. But for the first half of Modern Warfare, he was crushing it. And then guys like Asim, Alex, Assault, and Silly, especially with guys with like Asim and Silly, they're both like really good like team-oriented role players. But I think sometimes you can run into a problem with having too many of those guys on one team, and then like it puts a lot of stress on guys like Assault, who's a really good AR player, and guys like God X, where it just kind of falls apart in the end.
Mm,
But yeah, I thought that team was like fine. Like you looked at them, you expected them to be like a top six, top eight team, just with the names they had,
yeah.
especially in the second half, and it's kind of just how they played.
Yeah, I feel like this was one of those rosters that was like a kind of a like a roll the dice kind of like a roster. It wasn't like not like without too much risk. It was almost like you're kind of giving yourself a high floor but a low ceiling type of thing
Hmm.
where it's like, maybe they click, maybe their teamwork can bring them up above just their talent that they've
Yep.
shown before, but it was a kind of like a safe pick for the
Yeah.
at least like whoever was creating that roster. It was just a like a safe, these
Hmm.
players I know they'll perform at a certain level, and I just hope that you can get like a star player to shine through.
And I think we'll like bring that up more with the exact org when we
Yep.
talk about
Yep.
next season. But yeah, with New York, Zuma's been a great sub player for a long time. Accuracy's just been known to be like that leader AR, and he did it again last season in Attach. Always a crazy talent. And then they started off with Happy. I can't remember. Mac definitely wasn't there at the beginning, but then they
Um.
brought Mac in about halfway through the season, and he just became one of the best players in the league. Just whether it's online or like whatever you might say about him, he's still performed. Everyone played under the same
Oh yeah.
circumstances for the
Yep.
most point or
I
most
hate
part,
I
and
hate
he
hearing that.
crushed.
I hate
Yeah,
I hate hearing it, but at the same time, like I can't give a 100% dispute to what they're saying. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's
The
it's
world we live in.
yeah, it's just I mean, everyone has to deal with it. So like you were saying before, everyone has to deal with it. So everyone's kind of on a equal playing field. I mean, at this point, if you're a
Hmm.
pro and you don't have fiber, that is, I mean, honestly, probably not acceptable at this
Yeah,
point. You know what I mean? Like like
exactly.
teams should either pay for their there to be or pay for their housing to be wherever fiber is, or
Hmm.
enforce fiber on every single person.
Yep.
So I
Yeah.
mean, that's a
Then
different topic.
yeah, New York ended up winning an event, and I mean they played pretty well.
Yep.
Then like the roster you saw like on a piece of paper in the second half of the season, they kind of played how you thought, like veterans across the board outside of Mac, and they played really well, and they picked up the game the further it went along. And we can go through these last four like relatively quickly. I mean they didn't really perform that well.
Mm.
Optic Gaming LA, which obviously no longer in the league, this is like probably the biggest disappointing roster of season one.
Yep.
Like, they had
Agreed.
Dashy, they had Slasher, Kenny, TJ, and then JCap to be like the leader
Yeah.
veteran type
Just
mind.
those names alone, like
Yeah,
you would just like you hear those
yeah,
names and you're like, holy, like this is kind of like
exactly.
not like a star roster, but like this is that kind of Dallas Empire esque
Hmm.
roster. Like you have the veterans in JCap and Slasher,
Yep,
and uh, you just like almost expected everything to kind of come together with
yep.
the raw talent mixed with the mind and the veteran of Slasher
Hmm.
and JCap.
Yeah, like if they had this roster in Black Ops 4, they're winning championships. Like
100%.
Slasher, a top AR in that game, probably like top three AR. Dashy, probably a top three overall player. Kenny, really solid. TJ, really solid. Then JCap, one of like the better minds in Call of Duty history, and he's coaching now. It makes sense,
Yep.
but they just didn't come up. And then Paris, Paris is like such a weird team because they never made a change, and they
Yeah.
just like kept
Yep.
the five they had the whole time,
That was
even
strange.
though
That was very strange.
yeah, even though they had someone in Brezzy who I liked a lot back in Black Ops 4. I forget what team he played for exactly, but towards the end of the season, like he was doing really well. And Phantoms is like a top am still today, and he never got a shot. And they just maybe they kept it that way because like a lot of those guys are European players, where like Phantoms
Yeah.
isn't. But like they had Kismet as well, and this felt like just a roster they got just because like hey, like all the other rosters are done, and this is your last like best choices
Yeah,
or
I mean,
best choices.
on top of that, just a little kind of to backtrack just for a second. Um, the one the one tournament that Optic did well, they had Chino, and then they just sat him down the
Yeah.
next one, which is like kind of strange from my perspective. I mean, obviously I'm a big Chino fan, and I log a lot of hours in his stream, But like,
Mm-hmm.
and he's cool and all, but like, realistically, you perform with a set of five. Like sometimes I know people talk about it a lot with karma, but like those the stuff that isn't shown in the stats. You know what
Yep.
I mean? That the stuff that a player brings to a team without just like having it visible to like the
Yeah.
naked eye. You know what I mean? And it's kind of sad that they kind of just let that kind of falter right after they
Mm-hmm.
put up such a good fight versus all of these good teams. But yeah, that was
Yeah.
just a little side note about that.
Yeah, then moving on to Seattle, this is like another team that was super disappointing. Like Octane, you could argue he was the best player in Black Ops 4, and like, I mean, it's hard to like argue against it. Like
Mhm.
people will say names like Simp and Dashy, but Octane was disgusting. And then Karma's not listed there, but they had Karma, who at the time was the only player with 3 championships, and was just coming off being with the Optic roster. Like it's just the goat, literally.
Yep.
And then Slacked and Apathy, who've been decent subs for a long time, and like everyone always says about Apathy, he always performs at champs. And then Enable, which this is where I would say they kind of ran into like an iffy situation like Minnesota did, where
Mhm.
they had like a star player in Octane and like a really good player in Karma. We thought. I mean, this game wasn't his game, but like he's always been known for being a great player. Like Apathy, a really good high pace sub. But then you get like slacked and then able, and that's where you start to run into having too many of those role players, like how you said, like Chino was.
Yep.
Like Chino's like a great player in his role, but if you have multiple Chinos on the same team, it's probably not going to end well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I think this team fell apart. And also, like they have plenty of other issues that like Octane was airing out on Twitter. But it's just like another disappointing team, not to the extent I would say as OGLA was,
Mhm.
but like another team you saw on paper when rosters first got announced, and you're like, yeah, this team's gonna do well. Like
Yep.
just you see the names, but
Always seen those like the Twitter memes of Octane being trapped or like
yeah.
jailed because he's with just like people there and they're just not performing even though he's putting up like you would always see like I remember I'm a big Temp fan and I would
Mm-hmm.
always see like you would see the stats from like the subliners did fairly well last like they weren't terrible but like
Mm-hmm.
you would always I would always see the damage charts in Black Ops 4 with Temp on that what was it Splice team
Yep.
and you would always see him number 1 or number 2 every single tournament
Mm-hmm.
and this man always just got his whole team just got
Yeah, Octane.
put down like
Mm-hmm.
sick one. Like it was just unfortunate.
Yep. Then last team, Toronto, and this is a team like everyone saw at first, and they just saw 10 players, which is like the max that the CDL allowed. I think a minimum was 7 you had to have with your 5 starters, 2 bench players,
Hmm.
and then you could have up to 10. And they took like full advantage of it, and I actually thought they did relatively well, like utilizing the 10 player system. Like Methods always played, Cammy always played. I think Vance always played, but then Classic and Kleenex weren't always in there. Classic getting taken out for whatever reason. But yeah, they just have like talented players. Like if you look at like Black Ops 4 standing or like World War II, like Metals was very good on the Heretics team in Black Ops 4. Brack was really good. I think on
Midnight.
Luminosity
He was on
or yeah,
Midnight.
Midnight and Luminosity. Yeah, those 2 teams, he was like super talented, and I was surprised he didn't start for them. And like Looney's always been a winner, always been like a veteran voice, and he got taken off the lineup I think like halfway through the season.
Yep.
And then Lucky also being on a Heretics team, who's a really good sniper in Black Ops 4. And then Mayhem, who's also like he's always been like a player that's been around, like he's not bad.
Yep.
Like they just had so many options.
So many.
So
Yeah. There's just there the. I mean, honestly, so I'm gonna say this, right? So you look at that Toronto team compared to these other teams, and obviously they have that talent. But I mean,
mm-hmm.
if I were to put the talent comparable to, like, I remember we would always have conversations of like, you take, Atlanta's sub duo, like their number one sub duo.
Yep.
Then you take the flex player. He's like basically number one flex player. So like
Yep.
you have those and you like try to compare them to others. But like if you were to take the two subs and two ARs from the Toronto team versus like a lot of these other teams, like there's a lot of other teams that stack up heavily with like their
Yeah.
ARs and they have really good ARs. But like it makes me wonder if like the fact that they had that 5 stack to you know scrim against and practice against use like all of their strategies without like having to worry about leaking anything
Yeah.
anything that they want. Like, is that a reason why they were able to, pull out that win? Was that
Yeah, and they
versus
ended up
Dallas,
winning.
right?
Yeah, they ended up winning an event, and I think most teams or most people when they first saw this roster, would be like, "There's no way
Yeah,
this team
exactly.
wins the event,"
Versus
unless
it's
they
versus a
like
team like
fully.
Dallas, especially like.
Exactly. Yeah. Unless they like fully maximize the potential of having a 10-man roster, which I don't know if they did that to a certain extent,
Mhm.
but like they did it. Like they like really utilized like scrimming against each other or like trying different combinations, which I think they embraced more towards the end of the season.
Mhm.
But yeah, they got the win. And I was definitely surprised by that one. That's for
100%.
sure.
Especially in a person like Kleenex. I remember us talking about seeing him. I actually met him at I think I saw him at uh what was it? When we went
Was
to
it
Fort
Fort
Worth.
Worth?
Yeah,
Mm.
I think I saw him. He was he underage then? I think he might have been
No, he was
18
playing with
then.
Singularity.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
that.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think I actually saw his team competing there, which is kind of funny. But like he was
Mm-hmm.
always when we were watching the AM bracket through Hold Shift when he was streaming that. I think we were seeing Kleenex like it was champs. It was champs actually because they made it to champs, and they were like wiping the floor with some team, and Kleenex was
Yeah.
like had this huge play, and like that's what got eyes on him, and it's kind of like it's kind of cool to see that at least like one of the true like not no names I would say, but like coming from a viewer's perspective, like someone that I never heard before, never seen before, popping off and getting onto a team the next year, like that's like just shows the
Yeah.
process that they have for implementing amateurs into the pro scene,
Yeah.
which
The AM scene
is
works.
good. Um,
Like there's multiple names that came up in this season that were like formerly AM players, like Mac
yep,
being like the best example. Like he was never a pro before, and he ended up becoming a pro this season through the Challenger system, and was regarded probably as like a top 10 player in the game.
yep.
So
And
shows it works. There's so much talent out there.
I know we've talked about just kind of as a side thing before we head on into the 2021 rosters, the just the AM scene in general and the AM brackets and stuff like that, and how um, at some point I feel like I know that Subliners has a what is it?
Academy team.
Yeah, academy team. FaZe does. Who
Hmm.
else does? Like,
LAG does.
yep, LAG.
I
They're
think
using
there's a couple
some
others.
of them as rosters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some others, but like, you know, these teams have such good opportunity to because I know the whole point of challengers team is for like all of these ambiguous players to like come together and see who can win. But obviously we know who wins a lot of the stuff. I mean, literally probably 70% of the tournaments have been won by the same like rough group of players
Yep.
in like challengers. I mean, in NA at least. Like you know that Wester is gonna come in slap face. Like I
Yeah.
think right now they're probably in the finals, if not already completed the challengers
Yeah, and we're
bracket.
recording this on the second day of the 2K,
Yeah,
so
so
yeah, we know this probably just
probably.
crushing right now.
Yeah, and I remember I was looking because I was in that with a couple of randoms, and I kept the bracket open, and I looked when I woke up this morning, and they they were already in semifinals, and I was like, you know what? Like we already know what's happening.
Yep,
Like they're gonna lay it
going back to
down, they're
back to
gonna
back to
do it
back.
up. So uh, I definitely think that having academy teams and having these teams invest, because I mean obviously these teams are rich. Like we all heard when the CDL got announced, like 25 mil buy-in. Like these teams have money, and it makes sense that these teams would invest in newer talent because I mean, obviously the veteran talent in these players is really good, but I mean, there is so many like people with gunnies out there that would like not saying that a lot of these pros don't have gunnies, but I mean like a lot of these players have gunnies and have this
Mm.
knowledge and this hunger to learn and this hunger to be better, but like they just don't know the game as well as these guys do. So you give them actual coaching, like you allow your CDL coaches to coach that like not underage but uh academy team,
Mm.
and you'd probably see a lot of growth and a lot of like players that you heard of before, maybe not as much, but like you'd probably see a lot of growth in the academy in the challenger circuit from like
Mm.
players in those academy teams, which I think would be personally cool. But obviously, money restraints, time restraints, coaches not being able to do both. It's a
Yeah.
mixed bag, but um, head on into the 2021 roster. This is the
Yeah.
big leagues.
So, a couple different teams in here this time with Optic returning with Hex in them, and then the LA Thieves taking the OGLA spot. They're just
Yep.
going from left to right again, like Atlanta. Boom. Just like how we said last time. You look at this team on paper, and it's like, how did they get that team, or how were they able to keep it? Simp, like best player in the league last year, arguably, obviously up there with Shotzi. Abizi, one of the best subs in the game for like 3 straight titles now. Stellium, one of the best flex players the past few years. And Arcides, like I was saying with the Chicago roster for the last season discussion, one of the guys I regard as one of the top like AR players. And like on this team, he doesn't have to be like a slay heavy guy.
Yep.
Like he just has to like do his role, like pick or fill up the lanes, like cover the guys that are ahead of him, Simp and Abizi, and that's it. Like you could argue that he's like the least talented guy of the four,
And
in
just
quotes,
that's just
obviously.
ridiculous to even say
Yeah,
out loud, but it's honestly something that you
could be
could,
true.
yeah, you could like prop up. Like, I
Yep.
mean, you just gotta. He's able to sink into his role more in, like in the 4v4 setting. Obviously, gunfights matter more, positioning matters more, spawns matter more, and I think this is gonna be a big time for those main
Hmm.
ARs to like actually control the the game in general, and like,
Yep.
like your players like Octane, like those, he could, if he's dropping 50 kills in a match, like 40 kills, there's
Yep.
no way you're losing with a main AR dropping that many with 4v4, just because of
Yeah.
like how, like if you're getting 40 kills as a main AR, you're locking spawns forever. Like they are not taking spawns from you.
Yeah,
And
and
that kind of
actually 40 kills for all my AM players out there. Not 40 eliminations. There's a difference. People bring that up all the
Yep,
time.
yep. And
But like the roster's disgusting.
yeah, and like that. Oh, going on to the next team, like that sentiment holds so much
Yep.
more true even on this team because, like, if you think about this team and in obviously in their main AR of Crim6, like having that mind be your main AR, like
Hmm.
almost makes me think that that might be like your better, like if you were to have a veteran player, having them on the main AR, not saying that
Hmm.
that takes the least skill in terms of aim, but I mean realistically, like your subs have to be the most cracked and your flex has to be
Yep.
cracked as well, and your main AR has to like have that mind and that knowledge, knowing where to go and knowing where to line up, because a lot of your main AR kills are going to be lined up, are going to be your centering, stuff like that, and having someone in Crim6 as your main R, like that is, that's going to be a dominant,
Yeah.
team,
And
and
it's
I think
good.
it's good.
Like just going off what you were saying, having him as an AR, it's good having a player like that as well that knows what they're seeing because they have more time to see what's happening on the map and like
Hmm.
more time to evaluate it. And obviously like descend it down to their teammates like Shotzi and Hook, who I'm sure are running the SMGs for them, who are going to be like more in the battle and like don't have as much time to think in their head
Hmm.
about what's going on. And Crim's just the greatest player of all time running your AR, having so much time to evaluate what's happening on the map, and especially even more with it being 4v4 with less players on the map, less engagement. So he just has like all the time in the world to be like, hey, who shots he hits this lane right here that's empty or whatever. But
Yeah, man,
yeah,
it's
and
nuts.
Rambo returning as a coach for them, and Crowder for Atlanta, same two coaches from last year. I mean, like we'll get into it a little bit later, but like a spoiler, these are my top two teams, and I don't think like after these two teams, I don't think it's close for like it's definitely like a teardrop for me. Like you have the top two teams from last year, and wouldn't be surprised if it's those two in the finals again at chance. Wouldn't be shocked. Then going into Florida, you can see Neptune's listed there as a sub. I think he's actually starting for them now. Like a few days ago, I
Yep.
saw a clip.
Havoc, right?
Yeah, he's coming in for Havoc, and I don't know a lot yet about Neptune, the player. Like I know he's like a highly regarded amateur player, obviously pro now, but I know Havoc obviously was running a sub last year for Florida, and I'm assuming he was going to do the same again this year. So that would probably put Neptune on a sub for them this season, with Awakening and Skies running ARs and Slack being his SMG duo. And I think having this team down to 4 players instead of 5 will really help because it like more concentrates on the talent that Awakening and Skies have. And if Neptune can be like a cracked out sub, like we were talking about, like guys like Sympabizi, Shotzi, all those types, and like let slacks play like that dirty role or dirty work type role.
Mhm.
And I think this team could be kind of surprising because like Skies and Awakening have straight beamers, like how you said about Awakening before. He got
Yep.
accused of hacking because like how fucking like straight he shoots. Then obviously Sky is the same level of player. Slacks has been around forever and like has consistently won, even though some people don't think he's that great of a player. But he's like a consistent winner, like he's proven.
Yep.
And then if Neptune can just come in, this is my biggest question mark about this team. Like you know what you have in other three players, but if Neptune can come in and like be that high engagement, high pace sub, then I think it would be really good for them.
100%.
Yeah, going into the team I might be rooting for this season because they don't have Weskin and Scraps. We'll see. But I really like just looking at the flags. You can just tell they embraced like the European culture, like that they want to make for their team, and I think that's super dope. Obviously, there's like if you look across all these teams, most of the talent is coming from NA right now, which
Yep.
makes sense because Call of Duty is more of a NA esport than other ones. Like if you look at like CS, or League, Rocket League, stuff like that, like heavily dominated by like European and Middle Eastern players for the most part. But like Shawnee, oh, it would be interesting to see if he can like remain consistent like how he was at the end of last season. And then Alex is someone I hold like on high regard, especially with Minnesota, and like he was playing really well during that season, and I think he ended up having like, a thumb injury and like wasn't really the same after that.
Yep.
But like this team's pretty clear. You're gonna see Alex and Dylan on the subs, and Zero and Shawnee running the ARs. There should never be like a role, what's the right word? Like a role problem, I guess, on this team.
Mhm.
Because like Alex and Dylan, you're not taking them off subs. Like that would be pretty ridiculous if you did. Then Zero and Shawnee just got to be able to keep up with guys like Awakening Skies or RCDs and Celium, like we talked about earlier. And I think this team, like low key, could be pretty decent. Maybe even like a top half team. I'm not trying to be biased, but yeah.
Yeah, I'd say definitely that they have a chance. Obviously, like I was saying before, Black Ops 4 and showed glimpses in MW. Dylan, obviously,
Hmm.
like people. I remember in MW, hearing a interview from Crimsix about how when there was a smoke, they would be scared to face London when that smoke meta was like super
Yep.
big, but just because you would know Dylan is just giving zero fucks and he's gonna
Yeah.
go straight through that
Yeah.
smoke
Dylan's
on
in the
some
smoke
crack
and you have
shit.
no aim assist.
Exactly,
So good luck.
exactly. Yeah, you were just terrified when but yeah, that team is gonna show some promise hopefully. And
Yeah, something I'll say real quick before we move on.
mm,
Dylan in Black Ops 4 on the reciprocity team, he had I forget the person's name, but like he had another really high paced sub to play alongside him,
mhm.
and I think part of the reason maybe why he did not play up to his like expectations last year is because they had Vance, who's like more of a slower, like take his time type sub player,
Was that Tommy on that team
or it might have been Tommy.
on
Yeah,
Rec,
it
right?
might have been.
Reciprocity.
Yeah, it might
Yep.
have been. But just like Dylan being, if he can get back into like that fast-paced, high-engagement player, I think that'd be great, and especially with Alex on his team, because that's the type of player Alex is as well.
Mhm.
So if they can just figure out the chemistry between the two, 'cause I'm not sure if they've teamed together in the past, but if they can just figure that out, and I think like it's all about just getting Dylan back to Black Ops 4 Dylan.
Yep.
Because if they do that, then that's going to catapult this team. Just to make
100%.
everything easier for the other guys, and it'll be great
That's always
for
what a
sure.
sub is. I mean, like, or that's always what like the duos like their thing. The duo
Hmm.
like AR duo always tries to make it easier on the subs, and the subs try to use that opening and try to utilize what the ARs give them and
Yep,
uh you know kind of spread it along the team.
for sure. Yeah, then next we got well, actually Chino's on this team, so I'll let you take this one.
Sure.
Your guy.
So we have the LA Gorillas. This year they have obviously they have their academy team, which is why Mental and Chino are on that
Hmm.
that bench slash swapped role. It's because they could be called up at any point. And they're starting four in Vivid, Apathy, Assault, and Silly. Um, obviously, um, Silly being on the Rocker last year, Apathy being on the Surge last
Yep.
year, Assault was on Subliners.
Minnesota as well.
Oh, Minnesota, my bad.
Yeah, with Silly.
Sorry, I was thinking of
Hmm.
someone else. Or I was thinking of Accuracy, my bad.
Hmm.
And then Vivid obviously staying on there, which was interesting from my perspective because I know Vivid did all right, but I know
Mm-hmm.
he had some pretty shaky events um with uh I mean, obviously you can't having a shaky single performance when someone on your team is dropping, not to meme them, but dropping like a .65 or like when their team is getting dominated that bad. I remember
Mm-hmm.
weren't I think they were one of the teams that got like 50 point clubbed or like 100 point clubbed by Empire and FaZe in
I
like
wouldn't be surprised if they
those
were.
are those crushing defeats. I mean, you can't really put up too big of a killing
Mm-hmm.
performance, especially if you're trying to play for the win. Like when you're getting beat that bad, you're no one's gonna do good. And Vivid staying, I mean, it didn't super shock me, but it did like it made me think a little bit. Obviously, he was new last year, so to the pro scene at least, and obviously maybe giving him another chance to be a part of a team. And then you have your veteran, your champs performer, Apathy,
Mm-hmm.
playing alongside him. Vivid's a sub, right?
Yep. Sub.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So Vivid and Apathy as their sub, and then you have Assault, who, I mean, if you follow Call of Duty, you've seen him for a while, and he is. I feel like he's another one of
Pretty
those
steady.
players,
Mm-hmm.
low or high skill floor, low skill ceiling, like the
Mm-hmm.
kind of median.
You
Um,
know what you're gonna get.
yeah,
Assault.
you can get a medium performance, and sometimes you can get that that pop off game from him,
Mm-hmm.
that we've seen from him, and then obviously having Silly, as flex position, right?
Yeah, he'll
Yep.
probably play flex for this team.
So I mean that he has a ring
Yeah.
with EU.
What team was that? I mean, what
That
game am I
was
thinking? World War Two.
Clayster, or
Or
yeah,
yeah, does he have two rings?
I think it was
I,
Black Ops 4, right? EU
no, that's no, he wasn't with them. That was RCD's Pristini Simp
Simp. Oh yeah,
and
yep, yep,
DZ
yep, yep, yep.
Clayster.
He had it with
I think it was with Envy. It was Apathy, Aches, Silly, and one other guy. But that was, I was it was Justin, a friend of I guess the podcast. You would say my friend Justin and I went to that event in Columbus because it's close to where we stay,
mhm.
and that was just like a shocking chance. Yeah, like he got the ring. So does
Yeah,
Apathy.
and I
So
mean, I
take
feel
that
like
away.
the meme almost comes from him, but like having that, the Reddit meme where it's like 6'4", fully tatted,
Yeah.
like that meme. Like every time I see him, I always forget that he has tattoos, and it always throws me for a loop that like some
Hmm.
guy playing Call of Duty can look like that. But that's just a little side note, but that's kind of funny. And then
Yeah.
obviously, like I said before, Mental and Chino. Mental coming from Gears actually.
Yep.
I think this is Call of Duty's first gear like swap from Gears to Call of Duty. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm
at
trying to
least in
think.
recent. I think actually, you know what? I think Crim6 played Gears actually. I believe. Like really really long time ago. But I mean, other than that, it's like the most like a pro who has transferred over, who is like actually deeply rooted in the pro scene, coming over to
Yeah.
Call of Duty, and
Yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head. Like if
it's
he ends up
gonna be
starting, he
interesting.
might be like the first one in recent history
Yep.
at least.
And
Yeah, like
I've seen clips from him.
mhm.
He's pretty nuts. He's pretty nuts.
Yeah, just looking at this team and the teams we talked about so far. I mean, obviously Neptune's already made the change, so you can't really bring him up. But like he's like the first player that's gonna get put into the starting lineup. Like I'm just gonna call it now. Either Vivid or Apathy's getting swapped out for him.
Yeah.
That's my call.
I
But
think I agree. I'd say
you can't keep Mental on like he has so much talent from like, winning champion like multiple championships
mhm.
and another title. That's also a console game. So like you can't keep him on the bench
And I know
unless he just doesn't develop.
they've performed somewhat in at least the last two. I think I was looking at over the 2K this one. I don't think they made semis or quarters. I'm not sure. I don't think the
Mm-hmm.
academy team did. But I mean, prior, I mean, at least before that, they were putting up numbers and they were getting into these semifinals of these AM things. And obviously,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to you don't want to say that you didn't win it if you're gonna move up to the pro scene, obviously. And I mean, it's almost inevitable. And I know we were talking about this before that um the the team of Zaptius and Co.
Wester.
Like
Mm-hmm.
Wester, like they are
Mm-hmm.
just they're born. They're born to they're gonna succeed in the Call
Yeah.
of Duty scene. you're gonna see all four of their names.
in the
You're
league
gonna
at some
Paul
point.
Paul X, right? He is like his numbers are lit. Like I'm pretty sure second 2K he averaged 1.48, I believe was the number
Yeah, it's
in
ridiculous.
overall game modes. Like that is not something you're seeing against someone who is of of like a similar skill level. Like if you
Yep.
see someone dropping a 1.48, like that's like didn't I think Scump in AW champs or somebody in AW champs they were dropping that number and like everyone's like astonished and like
Yeah.
seeing someone drop that against promising amateurs and people who are literally like in someone like Chino and Mental, they're literally playing in these tournaments who are on these pro teams as subs and they are getting these numbers put up against them, like you know that these guys mean business, and that's something solid that we'll see hopefully in the future.
Yeah. Then moving on to the other LA team,
My
which
favorite
is
team now because my boy's on it, you know, Temp.
yeah, his guy Temp. Yeah, so this is another like interesting team. They're running it back with this trio. Third season in a row now. TJ, Kenny, Slasher have been on the team in like some capacity, and I think it's a good idea. Like Kenny back in World War II. I always get those two games mixed up. But like he was considered like a rookie in that game, and he won MVP and Rookie of the Year. He was absolutely disgusting, and now you get him back in like a 4v4 game mindset, and also with Slasher, one of the greatest ARs of all time. TJ, who's like always seen as like an untapped potential SMG type player. Like we know he can be really good. Like he's called the Iceman for a reason. Like he
Mhm.
has it. He can be that player. And then Temp is like another player I feel the same way about. Like just another guy who's kind of. I would say he's definitely better than Pristini on his like a skill level. But
Mhm.
they're both guys who are like very high talent but very inconsistent. Like
Yes.
it's just like Temp can be legitimately a top
That
five player,
star. That star
or
that
he
they
can
need.
also be like a bottom five starter. It
Yep.
just depends on the day. So like this team, we'll see like when we get in the tier list a little bit later. But like this is another team I think is going to be up there. But like when you compare them to like a team like Atlanta,
Mhm.
who has four absolute superstars across every role, and then Dallas, all four of those guys on that team, since they didn't change other than dropping Clayster because it's 4v4 now, but
Yep.
all four of those guys champions. Like I don't know how they're really going to be able to compete with those two roles unless you see TJ come into like the TJ we know, and
Yep.
Kenny play like World at War Kenny and Temp. Like there's a lot of questions. Like that's like three different players who we're kind of like iffy on which one we're gonna
Yep.
get, like what version.
They
Or
could
Slasher,
like
like
low skill floor, high
yeah,
skill ceiling type of players. Those like
hmm
you know the jagged line type of players that could be up, could be down.
exactly.
Depends on if Temp's listening to
ACAP.
yeah yeah
Yeah.
depends. I mean obviously that funny meme with
Oh, him and Nate shot.
yeah, with him and Nate
Yeah.
Shot, obviously, that Temp talks so much shit about Nate Shot, and Nate Shot actually picking him up in the end, and
Yeah. Now he plays for him.
yeah, Nate Shot is literally paying his bills. Like it's kind of funny in the end, but
Yeah.
moving
Like
on
this
to the
this team's
next.
pretty simple. Like I mean, if even like two of those players I like made questions about, if even two of them show up, they'll be a top four team. No
100%,
questions asked.
100%.
If all three of them show up to the level we know, then sheesh, like they might be competing like regularly for championships. So
Agreed.
but yeah, with Minnesota, I brought it up earlier, and here we are. This is the safe team. Like this, like when they made this team, they're like, okay, let's get like the safest team possible, where we're not like a bottom four team, but also we're probably not a top four team. Like it just is what it is, and just knowing about the meta, what I do now, and obviously the meta always changes, but it's gonna be like two AR, two subs for majority of situations right now. So like when you look at this roster, attach, I think has run sub in the past, but last game on Warfare, he was really good working like the flex M4 role. Major Maniac, he was like a main AR last game mostly. Priesta, he's really good for being a flex. Then accuracy, you never want an SMG in his hand. So like accuracy, pencil him in for one of the AR roles. Then after like out of the three other guys, like maybe Major Maniac is the other AR. And then you have Attach and Priesta who are like natural flexes, being forced to only play the sub. So like role problems with this team is something I can see coming up. And as of right now, they don't have a listed sub according to COD Gamepedia. So like that's this is kind of what they have for right now. And I know it's something people bring up a lot is that this team's going to be slow because they have four guys with like a main AR mindset for the
Yep.
most part. Um, I think that is a legitimate concern just seeing how this game plays so far. But like also what you know you're gonna get from this team on a positive side, like these guys are all winners. Like they have won and like across multiple titles. Attach like being like the most known for that, and the Major Maniac last year, Priesta with 100 Thieves back in Black Ops 4. Like these guys are all winners. They're all veterans. They know how to play the game. They got Saint, who's like another coach I really respect. Like these guys are going to play the game correctly, and that's always something like I pride myself as a coach and like the AM scene that's trying to get my teams to do. If anything, I want us to play correct. Like this team's going to play the right way. It's just like the skill level there or like the role issues, pacing stuff like that. I think that's kind of going to come into question. We'll see.
Yeah,
But
I'm hoping for the best. Obviously, they have. I mean, we've seen all these names before, and we know
hmm
what they can do and what they've done. All winners, all of at least
yeah,
championship under their belt. If not, what Priesta? Wait, does Accuracy have a? I don't think Accuracy or Priesta have a ring.
well, Accuracy won, I guess, a ring last year. Are you talking about like champs or
Yeah,
just
yeah,
events?
champs.
Okay, yeah, Accuracy doesn't have one.
Or
Priest,
Mater doesn't have one actually. Yeah,
Major
so
doesn't
I
have a
mean,
ring
yeah, I
either.
guess I
Yeah,
mean
I meant like events, I guess
championships.
I should
Yeah,
say.
yeah, no events. Yeah, like a chip. Yeah, that's what they
Yeah.
that's what that's the slang term for it. A chip. I mean, all of them
hmm
have chips, so like they all have it. They've all shown it. It's just a matter of showing it on the big stage now. That I mean,
Exactly.
I guess not on the on the big screen. I guess if you want
yeah.
to call it that.
But yeah, and then New York, this looking at this team on paper, like man, this talent, like across the board. This is like another team, similar to what team was I talking about last season? I think it was Florida, where like towards the end of the season, you just see like talent. Again,
Mhm.
like recipes Pharaoh, but, like Pharaoh was on the team, Awakening Skies, just talent across the board. With this, like you have Clayster, a top 5 player of all time, one of the few players to have 3 rings, coming off back-to-back Call of Duty championships. Like you don't get more decorated than that unless you're Crim Six, but but yeah, Clayster running their main AR, and then Zuma, a high engagement sub alongside Mac.
The
I
flanker.
don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Zuma, the flank, of course. But I don't know what role Mac is playing. I think he's going to be more of like a flex player because they have Hydra listed, but I know right now they're scrimming with ASIM, I'm pretty sure. And like they're preparing to play with ASIM because I think Hydra is stuck overseas still,
Yep.
just with all the COVID stuff going on. So their roster, I think, for the first weekend at least, is going to be Clayster, Mac, Zuma, Asim, which I mean that is such like a high-paced team. Like Asim's like more of the dirty work sub type player, but like he is going to get you engagements. So is Zuma, and so was Mac last year. And Mac will probably still give you that this year with XM4 or Krig, whatever he ends up running. Again,
Yeah,
Clayster's probably gonna be with a Krig. So,
I remember hearing a
but,
lot about. I mean, obviously, ASIM was on Phase Black in Black Ops 4,
yep. hmm
and hearing a lot about him, and everyone raved about. I remember seeing some pro testaments about how he was. He wasn't. I remember Crim6 always tweeting about people who are kill whores, people who are
Yep.
only going for the stat sheets, and like he's not one of those. And like he
Absolutely
wants
not.
to win. Like he's gonna put it on the table. He's gonna risk it all and like get you that win that you need without like that behind the scenes type of do the work, put in the
Yeah.
work and win the game type of player. And I think that's exactly what a team like this needs to win. And
hmm
while my boy went over to LA Thieves, I mean I'm still those are my two teams. LA Thieves and New York Subliners,
Yep.
opposite sides of the U.S. But
Yeah.
we'll hopefully they'll both pull out something this year.
Yeah,
And
this
then
is another team that had like a lot of questions behind them, but like it's kind of simple. Like
yep.
you know what you're getting from Clay, you know what you're getting from with Zuma. And then we'll see if Matt can just continue like the superstar type performance he did last year. But then it just comes down to with COVID stuff, can Hydra get into the states and can he play? If not, they have Asim who's like a proven player and they'll just move forward with him. I think Hydra being on their team would like definitely raise the skill floor or the skill ceiling of the team,
Mhm.
just because like he's such a decorated am from the European scene.
Yeah.
But we'll see. It's just like 1 or 2 questions about this team. If everything falls into place, I guarantee you'll see them competing for events.
Yeah, it's
Like,
one of those we'll see type of teams.
yep,
Hoping. We'll see.
yeah. And then the next
Obviously,
team, yeah,
everyone knows them.
it's the
Everyone
Cat
loves them.
Boy team again. Optic Chicago back in the scene. Like this, I mean, this team speaks for itself. Like Scum Formal, 2 top probably 5 top 7 players ever. They're the duo T2P. Like everyone knows them.
Yep.
Envoy, funnily enough, is like in a leader role on this team, even though he has probably the least time played as like an AM in a pro out of the four, with Dashy like
The
pretty close
border.
behind him. Yeah, like he's gonna be the guy, and he's a very, very, very good sub. And I think another good thing about this team, like how I talked about, what team was I saying that for?
For
I
what?
think Atlanta. Like this team, like you know the roles they're all gonna play. Or I was talking about with that with London. Like you know the roles on this team. Like you know Alex and Dylan are gonna be on the sub, and then on this team you know Envoy and Scump are gonna be the sub players.
Mm-hmm.
And after that they have Formal and Dashy, who are like some of the nastiest shots you've ever seen on AR. So like yeah, I mean this team's pretty simple. And then they have Sender again, who's like another guy I look up to as a pro coach. He's a very good coach. Um, but yeah, with Scump and Envoy, they're probably gonna like be a fast-paced sub duo. Formal's gonna be more of your statue AR type. Then Dashy's gonna be probably on your XM4, just working with the two sub guys mostly. But like this is another team I see in that upper echelon. Not in my mind, not on the same tier as Atlanta or Dallas, who are gonna be like S tier for me,
Mm-hmm.
but they're really good.
I
They're a
remember
really good
seeing
team.
some scrim results actually. I mean, obviously you have you have the fanboy 24/7 optic watchers who will report all of their stuff on the subreddit.
Absolutely.
It's like the only team that I really see much about their scrims. Um, in they I think they went they I think they beat FaZe decent.
Mm.
Um, or no, not FaZe. It was I think they beat Empire and then they beat the they went like 3-2 with LA Thieves, and I think they did pretty good against FaZe as well. So I mean,
Okay.
showing some promise early
Mm-hmm.
on already. I mean, not super early on. Obviously, it starts fairly soon, but
Yep.
um, like they have they have the threat. You know, they have what they need. They have the resources. Can they pull it together? I know a lot of as a former Optic fanboy. That I know that uh they've had some trouble with I feel like less talent, more so team interactions, and like
Okay.
how they how I mean obviously over the years they've had a couple of like team splits and bring coming back together and all of that sort of stuff. And obviously it's one of the only teams where
Mm-hmm.
you get to air, like see all their stuff aired out because they're all streaming and
Yeah.
making YouTube videos and stuff. But like a team that has a lot of promise, and I hope that obviously in someone like Dashy, the the reports and like the stuff that he's like not super dedicated, or he's one of those like kind of
Mm-hmm.
cocky, let the talent speak for itself type of players. Hopefully, they can all be reined in and they can all, you know, um, bring something cool. And hopefully,
Yeah.
I mean, hope that like just from the rosters themselves, like this. Hopefully, this is a competitive year. I really
Oh,
really hope.
absolutely will
Like
be.
that's
Mm-hmm.
always the best from a neutral. Like obviously, I like the LA Thieves. I like the subliners, but I mean, realistically, I don't want them to just win everything like domination. Like you
Mm-hmm.
want to see good games. You want to see close games. Heated moments. And I think this year specifically is definitely a good year, and something that could lead to a very very good viewer perspective. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Then
with that,
oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
I'd go to the Legion.
Yeah. These we just try and go for these next three teams like rather quickly, just because there's so many question marks about all of these teams in
Yeah.
my mind. And I think they all actually have like pretty good skill ceilings though. Like Scraps is obviously my favorite player. He's a really good flex player. I think he can keep up with the best of them. Classic, a veteran who's been around a long time. Aqua, the same. And then they have Fire, who's a AM making his pro debut soon.
Yep. Top
He's kind
top
of like
top am.
yeah, like, oh yeah, for sure. And just like how Neptune is with Florida, is this team kind of like the success of this team kind of depends with him. Like if he can become like a top level sub player, then I think this team will be great
Oh yeah,
because
that's
you'll
who it
have
was. That's who it was. Who they went 3-2 with. It was with Paris Legion. Optic went three
oh
two with Paris Legion,
okay
and I
well
was
then
like, that really kind of like, because I saw like 5-0, and I saw like 4-1, and then I saw 3-2, and then I saw
yeah
Paris Legion next to it, and I was like, hold on, like this is
yeah
kind
this
of
team can make some waves for
this
sure.
is interesting.
Like they have Aqua, who's like always gonna be your slower AR type. Classic, who's like your dirty work sub. Fire just has to fill in that role because we know what we're gonna get from Scraps, but
Yep.
like Fire just has to be able to fill in that high engagement, like I know KD's not everything, but like a decent KD sub
Yep.
where he takes some pressure off of like guys like Scraps and Aqua. And with Seattle, like this team right here, like this,
Oh Lord, have
I'll
mercy.
say this right now.
Lord, have
I'll
mercy.
make this statement. I will make this statement. This is my, I guess, first bold statement of the year. This could be the best team in the league. And yeah,
Chee!
like this
Oh
could
my
be the best
God.
team in the league.
You said it.
Octane the past few years, he's been the best AR in over like 3, 4 titles. I think that's hard to argue against too. Gunless, we saw it in Black Ops 4 and in other titles like World at War or World War II. I get keeping those mixed up. But like he has been the best player in the game in almost every game. In like the past, like obviously not Modern Warfare, but like Black Ops 4, World War II, other games before that, like he's been the best player. And like people, even pros say that themselves.
Yeah.
Then Looney,
About scary
he
Gunny.
is a winner. Like Looney wins. He's like slacked in that aspect almost. Like you know what you're getting out of these guys, and it comes down to it with Pristini. I think that's where this team's gonna lie.
Mhm.
Like because Octane and Gunless are probably gonna be your AR flex players, and it just comes to Pristini and Looney being able to keep up with like Envoy and Scump or Mac and Zuma or Zuma and Hydra, whoever ends up being, and who can Illy. Do I think they'll be able to like consistently like beat out duos like that? No, absolutely not. But that's why you have Octane and Gunless, who can beat any AR flex duo in the league. I don't care who you bring up,
Yeah.
but it just depends. So this is like a nuclear situation almost. Either it's going to be up here or it's going to be down here. There's like no in between. This is not going to be a middling team. They're going to be very good or very bad. So
Agreed.
this is
And I
my
mean,
take
from
on
what I've
them.
seen from scrims, I believe they are not doing that well.
Hmm.
So, I mean, not gonna, not gonna jinx it or anything like that, but I mean, so far, from what I've seen, it hasn't been all good news.
And we'll see.
We'll see. And
That's the statement I made is just purely off on paper.
all right, well,
Like,
I'm gonna keep that in my head. We're locking that in now.
yep.
We know where you stand now. So I'll definitely get at you once we get our first tournament.
Yeah, we'll see on like the next podcast after the first event, the launch weekend. But and Toronto's like another team for me too, which so I kind of like how you brought up LAG keeping Vivid was kind of like a curious decision.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt with Toronto keeping Bance. Like Methods, Kleenex, and Cammy for sure. I understand keeping them, but
Mhm.
with Bance, I was kind of like, did he really show you that much last year to like keep him?
Yeah.
Like, I know he's someone who's been around for a long time, gets like all the respect from the pros for sure. But like I felt like they needed more of like a higher level addition. Maybe that just wasn't out there to be had. I mean, they did pick up Insight, who was on the Singularity team last year, who
Mhm.
crushed. And like how I said with who was it, Mental? Like I'm guaranteeing Mental is going to be playing for that roster at some point this year. It's kind of how I feel about Insight. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Insight comes in for Bance or Kleenex at some point as their second sub, or even as a flex player. But
I agree
like
with that.
Methods, yeah, Methods is kind of like Assault to me, where like you know what you're gonna get from Methods. He's gonna give you like a 1-1, a 1-1-5 KD. Um, Cammy really showed out last year, so he's kind of like Mac in that aspect. Where we'll see if he continues it. Then Kleenex is kind of like shaky a little bit, but fine. And then Bance, I was like, huh. Yeah, that was like my first thought, like, huh. I'm surprised they brought him back.
Yep.
But yep, like any closing statements about these last 3 teams
Um.
we went over?
So, I'm so with Paris Legion, I'm a huge fan of AMS making it up.
Yep.
Getting into the scene, and I followed Fire, not so much Parasite, but I mean he's the one who kind of showed Fire off to the scene.
Hmm.
Obviously Parasite is known as like the AM builder,
Like the Am
like
Godfather.
he leads people to something he can attain type of thing.
Yeah.
And Fire is all the stuff that I've seen, all the VODs that I've watched on this team, like on the Parasite's old team, they were like Fire was nasty, and someone of that low of like that young, showing that much talent, kind of like obviously he wasn't that um like viewed in the S&D scene like Simp
Mm-hmm.
and Illy, like those guys were like huge, like
Mm-hmm.
everyone knew their name before they actually like
And like
even
Salium Dashi.
saw them even. Yeah, like I remember I didn't see Simp's face or Illy's face until they were literally on a pro team. Like
Yep.
that's how funny that was. And like someone like Fire, it's the same thing. Like he's getting shoved forward into the stardom, and Like a team like that like that Legion team, like he's gotta. They're putting a lot of shit on his back, and like he's got to perform and put up the numbers. And then
Mm-hmm.
Seattle, just as some short stuff. Seattle, obviously gunless. Um, I mean, I remember seeing clips of other streamers talking about how gunless supposedly has the best gunny out of anyone in. I remember in World War II and Black Ops 4, they were talking about gunless. Like gunless is like he's the demon. He's the guy you need to watch out for. And I mean, realistically, like he's shown it, and he just needs to like um, hold it down in the team perspective and hopefully, you know, hopefully do something. Like you said before, like
Mm-hmm.
this roster is something for sure. Because I
Yeah.
remember people were getting on Pristini's back for not performing that well. People were getting on Looney's back for not performing that well. I remember when he was on Splice with Temp, like people were getting on him and like all the teammates because Temp was putting up some disgusting numbers. It was like that Octane situation on the Surge last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean like you know what you're getting out of Octane. If Gunless pops off, they are going to be disgusting. Pristini can be that like that kind of like that all around kind of player and possibly be that gunny that you need. And then Looney being that veteran talent, I mean, it's
Yep.
it's questionable, and it's something that could show something. And then with the Ultra, I mean, obviously, we all know methods, we all know Cammy, Kleenex new to the scene, and Vance. We know it's gonna be interesting, and having maybe possibly having that duo of Kleenex and Insight that that raw they come from the AM scene, they came from the same team,
Mm-hmm.
like having that duo might who knows what's gonna happen, who knows like if that that chemistry will click back in, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something to definitely look out for. But with that, um, that ends our 2020 and 2021 seasons. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
going over their teams and giving our thoughts. I do want to say before we move on to the next segment, in next in like podcasts in the future, I definitely think that it won't be this much raw, like going over everything, as much as it will be kind of more personality and more giving our opinions and thoughts on
Yeah.
not so much rosters, but like games and what we think's gonna happen. So I would definitely say that this is a little different than how our other podcasts are gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
And
Agree.
then going into the next segment, we're going to do little tier list action.
Yep.
So
They probably just start from left to right with those teams.
yeah, I'm down. Obviously Atlanta FaZe. I mean,
I mean, I know I'm having a mess
I
here.
mean, I'm definitely having a mess here.
Yeah,
There's
I
not a
don't
lot of
care.
dispute we can do. They're Phase, they're
Yep,
Simp, they're
they're
Celium,
dominant.
they're BZ. Like in RCD's coming in as their third. Like this is just it's too much.
So
Obviously,
real quick, within the tiers, do you want to order the teams from like left to right, so like one, two,
yeah, we can do
three,
that.
or just put them in the same tier?
No, we can definitely order them.
Okay, so this
Uh,
is where I don't know if we're gonna disagree, but I'm giving them the respect. They have the greatest player of all time. I would have Dallas in one right now. Like, they just won champs. They have like four guys who
Proving
are
themselves.
insane. So does Atlanta,
Yeah,
but
I'd say they're the most proven out of FaZe and Dallas. I mean, we saw the same exact raw talent roster, and they were just
hmm
they had. I remember seeing they had the best overall record, but they didn't.
hmm
They couldn't beat them at the end, and
yeah.
that kind of shows like that ice that they have. So I would definitely say that as well.
Would you?
Florida.
So I know we're on Florida, but just overall, will you have any other teams S tier? 'Cause I won't.
Um,
I think these are just the top two, bar none.
I would say um the only other team that's close is Optic, and
Okay.
I will definitely once we get to there, we can
Yeah.
talk more about it. In Florida, so Florida, being Awakening Skies, Slacked, and most likely
Neptune.
Neptune.
hmm
Um, we were talking about this team, how they have a they like high skill floor in Awakening, and obviously Neptune being in there, and Skies. Skies came
hmm
from Halo, right?
I don't think so. I think he was in the AMC
Who
for a little
was
bit.
it
That
that
was
came from Halo?
Frosty last year.
Frosty, that's who it was.
Yeah. hmm
But
mm
other than that, yeah, They could be another, like the Florida of last year. They once they started cooking, they started cooking, and
Yeah,
they seemed almost unstoppable. After they went back to back, right?
I think it was back to back. Yeah, I
Yep.
was thinking about that when you were talking.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that I mean they can do it. I mean, so let's see. I mean, there's a lot of intangibles and a lot of like question marks on this team, but
Hmm.
um I think I put Florida. Um, I'd say I'd put them at probably a B. Like
Yeah.
we were saying before. Like I'd put them at probably a low B, high C, but I'd say B is definitely a good place to put them.
Yeah, I think for now, just with the unknowns of Neptune and swapping out Havoc like a little bit before the league's about to start,
Hmm.
I would say like a low to mid tier B is pretty comfortable for them in my head. And if Neptune can play to like the level he was in the AM scene,
Mm,
then this team could easily be A, I would think.
agreed.
But like I think like right now, like if you're telling me what Florida I'm expecting more often than not, I would say it's definitely like a B tier team, like top half team, probably right on the border.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say somewhere around there as well. I'd say probably just a slightly bit lower, but yeah, definitely B. And then we have London. If you wanna
Yeah.
give your thoughts a little first.
Sure. So yeah, Zero, Alex, Dylan, and Shawnee this year. I think Alex and Dylan could be really good. This is kind of like the situation a lot of these like mid to like lower mid tier teams run into is like it's a lot of maybe or shoulds. Like
Mhm.
it's a lot of unknowns. So with Alex and Dylan, if they can like bring out Black Ops 4 Dylan, this team will be like a comfortable B to me.
I
But
agree.
yes, but maybe they don't get there. We'll see.
I'd say a little bit above Florida. I mean,
You would have them better than Florida right
I
now?
I would I would have them a little bit above Florida or like
Okay.
around the exact same as Florida.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fine with me.
then we have the Gorillas in Vivid, Apathy, Assault, and Silly with
Yeah.
Mental and Chino on the bench. This team,
I would.
I don't know.
You go ahead.
This team is yeah. I mean, we talked about it before. Obviously, this is a in my head a wishy-washy team. Like you don't know. You're not 100% sure. So I mean, personally, I put them at C.
Yeah. So how I see them, I'll just say real quick, is just this is just all relative to the other teams in the league.
Hmm.
Of course, all these teams are great, whatever. But just like how more competitive it's going to be this year with 4v4, so one less player off every team just to make it even more competitive.
Yeah.
I would say this team is like probably like a high D in my mind. Assault, very good player. Silly's decent. Vivid's like, maybe he's good. I don't know. And then, oh, who's their last guy? That's Apathy. Yeah, Apathy's like another like average player at this point. I don't see who's winning games for them. Not that you need that on a team.
Yeah.
Like I don't know who's giving them
They're
like those
star
like
talent.
yeah like those great performances that you're gonna get from the other four teams we already mentioned. So I'm fine with the C if that's where you want them. In my head, they're like a high D, but yeah, one of those two for sure. Definitely not anywhere above that.
Yeah. I'd say I'd say a C personally. If you say a D, I mean we can. If you say like a high D, then we can meet around a low C. I'd say.
Yeah, for sure.
And then sorry about that, guys. We just had a little technical difficulties. Brandon's internet just dropped, but he's with us on his
Mm-hmm.
phone right now. Um, and we're about to talk about the LA Thieves. So the
Yep.
LA Thieves, in my opinion, they are. Oh well. Let me actually pull up the roster here. So TJ, Kenny, Slasher, and Temp. This in my
Mm-hmm.
head before it cut out when I was talking to you, or when I was talking to myself, I guess. Uh, I said this is a high B, low A, because I was talking about how the roster itself, like I'm thinking less comparing to last year. I know that they didn't pull through, but I might be a little based with this one, but I think they are a high B, low A team.
Okay, yeah. I was just thinking in my head, if we have them in B, they're certainly like the best B team,
Mhm.
I would say. Like, and I wouldn't really have it too close. So, like, with that being in my mind, knowing, like, I think that they would for sure beat any of the B teams we're going to have in there,
Mhm.
then I think we might just want to put them like a low A.
Yeah.
So maybe like the lowest A team if we add any other teams to A. But yeah, that's where I would have them. I mean, everyone knows these four guys. They crushed it in Black Ops 4, and then Modern Warfare. They tried to run it back again, and it just didn't work out too well for whatever reason.
Yep.
And they're going for a third time, and I don't think it's a bad idea.
All right. So we have them at the A tier. So now we have the rocker. The rocker
Mm-hmm.
consists of Attach, Major Maniac, Priesta, Inaccuracy.
Mm.
We were talking about this. You definitely talked about it before about the the nature of this team being so in the air.
Safe. Mm-hmm.
And
Like,
uh,
yeah.
I
But yeah,
I
this
don't know.
team is just one where, like, so it's when you look at all the names on paper, you're like, okay, these are all good players. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. I know I wouldn't.
Hmm.
But just how the roles are going to shape out with this current meta, like this is a 2 AR 2 sub meta right now. Like I don't know. I think they're going to run into a lot of issues, and I'm sure like they all know that themselves when they made this team.
Hmm.
So I would hope that they're like heavily working on it, and they have a really good coach in Brian Saint. Um, but I mean, that's just always going to be an issue for them no matter what, I think. So I think I would have them as like a low to mid tier B. They're certainly better than teams like LAG for sure.
Hmm.
But I don't know if I would say they would consistently be a London, Florida team.
Yeah, I would
So I
say
think I would have them a little bit below them. Where would you have them?
I would have them probably high C, low B personally. Like, and it's weird because you don't.
Okay.
I wouldn't put them on the same level as LAG, but at the same time, I don't think they are. I mean, they're closer. They're definitely closer to beating or losing to Florida and London as we have it than LAG, but they definitely aren't on
Mm.
the same level. So I'd say low. The low B is good.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
And then we have Optic. So Optic is obviously Scump, Formal, Envoy, or Envoy, and Dashi. This team, I've already seen a lot of good things in their scrims. I've heard a lot of good things. Obviously, everybody knows
Mm.
the players. I'd say this is a mid to high tier A. Above LA, I'd say, but below Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. It's like right, probably the highest A tier team we're gonna have. But like still in my mind, I think they're like a mid A, like you said.
Yeah.
Just because they're number one in A, I don't think that like means that they're like a high tier, almost S tier, or high tier A team, almost S tier team.
Mhm.
I just think they're mid, and they just happen to be better than the Thieves. I don't know. Like this, the rosters, like that top four right there, they're all so talented,
Mhm.
and it could shake out in like so many different ways. But I don't know. I don't see them better than those top two, and I definitely see them better than the Thieves. So I think that's a good spot.
I agree. And then we have Paris, which is Scraps, Aqua, Classic, and Fire. This is an interesting team.
Yeah.
Personally, I'd put this team at a mid B. I'd probably put them above.
Okay.
I'd probably put them above. Uh, I'd put them like actually I'd probably put them like right at the Rockers level of like they also are a team that I've seen show promise in scrims.
Mm.
Rockers more of like a mystery, but I think I'd put them right in front of Rocker in my head, but in
Hmm.
that B tier, right in front of Rocker, below Florida. Um,
Okay.
Obviously
Yeah,
Scraps
it's
is your
funny
boy,
because
but
it's funny because they have my guy Scraps, and maybe it's just because I haven't been to like I haven't been exposed to this team yet, and like seeing how they play.
mhm,
But I was just thinking more in my mind that I would have them high C, low B. But I mean, you've seen them more than I have at this point,
mhm.
and like Fire is a guy I have questions about, as like I think you do too. But you've said he's been playing pretty well so far, so I'll just take your word for it if you want to go like mid B, like
All right.
Soda. Then yeah, next is Seattle, what Gunless, Octane, Pristini, and Looney.
Mhm.
Because this is like, I mean, as I said before, this is a team I think could be the best team in the league, and I wouldn't be shocked. I don't know how long they would hold on to that title, but if at one point in this game we called them the best team in the league, I would not be shocked. Um, but then I also said they could be the worst team in the league, so it
True.
leaves them in like a tough spot. I don't want to just keep throwing teams in B because I think in their current state, maybe with like them underperforming in scrims, maybe they're more of a like a very low B, high C right now. What do you think?
I would put them high C. I would put them high C above LA
Okay.
personally,
And it's
especially.
tough because it's not like really saying they're bad. It's just the league is so good
Yeah,
this year.
exactly.
Now that we're like thinking this out, it's
hmm
tough. It is a really good
I would
league.
say that. Then we have the subliners who
Yep.
are Zuma, Mac, Clayster, and Hydra, but Hydra
Ace
obviously
them as of right now,
in
yeah.
that position, whatever he's in right now, problems that he's going through, it's ASIM. This is a team
It's an
with
interesting one.
yeah, it's one of the only teams with a uh or not one of the only teams, but like obviously LA has apathy and what was it? Dallas has Huke. I mean, he's
Silly.
been there in
Oh yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
in like Optic has Scump. But like the veteran combination of sub and AR could lead to some like some good results. But I as of right now, I haven't seen too much about their scrim results. I know they have been scrimming with ASIM, but I don't know how that has been going. Another mystery team kind of like we'll see how they do first day and a lot of these obviously I feel like a lot of the stuff that we have right now is going to be flipped upside down and like kind of mixed around and stuff just because obviously these are pre-season predictions so
Predictions.
we don't
Yep.
know but for subliners with that roster of Zuma Mac Clayster and ASIM I would say that they they have the potential and they have the knowledge and all the like key parts, but um, you know what will happen, nobody really knows. So I would say this is probably above Paris, below Florida, is what I'm thinking.
Hmm. I'm trying to think. So, man, Florida above New York. I'm just trying to think about that through my head. I don't I don't usually like to go like player for player like how people do in like traditional sports
Mhm.
on like you say this team's point guard versus that team's point guard. But like so if you look at it, Skies versus like Clayster is like the main ARs.
Mhm.
Obviously all time I'm taking Clayster. Like recently from like a KD perspective, you're gonna take Skies, but it's tough. So like I would call that almost like a push maybe. I haven't seen Skies play in this game yet, so maybe he doesn't stay like consistent how he was in MW.
Mhm.
Then if you take like Zuma and Hydra slash ASIM versus what Slacked and Neptune, there's a lot of unknown there too. And I'm almost just like inclined to take the Zuma Hydra slash ASIM duo just because we know more
Mhm.
like what that could be. And after that, it's Mac versus Awakening, which is like, geez, like two super talented guys that you could probably almost push that to. So I would say they're very close. I don't mind putting them below Florida. If that's how you feel, because I see these teams like very similarly, anyways.
Yeah. Same.
But yeah, I guess I would put them below Florida.
Okay.
It's tough though. Like these are all really good teams to be. I think.
Exactly. I think the distribution has these at actual tiers. Like these are good tiers. These are like Empire Phase are in a different tier than LA and
Yeah,
Optic.
they're
I'd
elite.
say we can say that for sure. Optic and LA, I'd
Yeah,
say are for sure in a different league than
the
um
B tier.
yeah,
Hmm.
than the B tier overall. And then the C tier are I'd say in a league below the B tier. Questionably Seattle, but we'll see. But I think the
Yeah.
tiers that we have here are pretty good so far. And then the last team, the Toronto Ultra, they are Cammy, Kleenex, Methods, and Bance with Insight on the bench. Another team of in quite like we'll see what happens. I know I said before that some other teams had the correct parts, but this team is interesting for what they're gonna get out of it. Obviously, Methods. He's been in the scene for a while, obviously, and what we were talking about before about how he's like, he can show some star moments and he can
Yeah.
kind of deliver. I would say that this team probably sits around a let me see. So we have the rocker there. Um, maybe I'd
In my
say the
head,
highest
I would say
C or the
like high
lowest B.
C.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay, yeah,
agree.
I'd
That's
say high
like
C.
right where I was gonna put them.
All right, so I'd say high C
Because
for
it's
sure.
like it's hard to like put them below a team like Seattle or LA and C because like that team won an event last year. Like they still have Kleenex, they still have Methods, they still
Hmm.
have Cammy, and Bance I'm pretty sure was starting for them too at the end. So like they have a team that won a event late in the year. Like obviously we're on two different games now, and the league is more competitive with the shorter rosters. But like again, like I'll say I've said it a few times. Just because they're in C tier doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. It's just like relative to other teams.
Yep.
Like B and C tier for me is like super tight.
Yeah.
Outside of LAG, I would say, but like B and C for me are really tight. Like the top two teams in C, I'd be shocked. Like at the end of the year,
Sorry,
so
say that one more time.
this
Your
is
mic was cutting
very
out a
like
little bit.
it looks to be a really competitive season. Oh, I was just saying like if Toronto, well, if our top two teams in C finish as the top two teams in B, and our top two teams in B finish as the top two in C at the end of the season, I wouldn't be shocked. Like at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So that's what I would have.
Okay. Yeah. No, I definitely think so. I think that this is solid tier list. I think that this should, something along these lines should hold through with some swaps in B and C possibly. But other than that, I think this is a good it's a pretty good tier list. And with that, I believe that we should wrap it up and kind of talk about the future of what we want to do and how we kind of
Mm-hmm.
want to structure the podcasts for later. Um, so I will say that, as I said before earlier in the podcast now was, it's the preseason podcast. It's the big podcast, to kind of talk about everything that's happened, everything, our predictions, and everything that's happening. Future podcasts, I would say that we are going to have a more, like, kind of a more personality podcast, I'd say. I definitely want to integrate some more
Mm-hmm.
personality into it and independent opinions because I feel like we were more so kind of trying to diverge our thoughts to kind of together to make these type of stuff. But in the future, we'll
Yeah.
have more independent thoughts and kind of try to talk more about the data side and what we see from the teams because I know I will be doing a lot of data stuff for this upcoming season, um, and hopefully
Mm-hmm.
we'll be able to bring some more content later on in this Call of Duty season.
Yeah, anytime like a new podcast forms, and especially in an esport with as much information as this one, there's always so much to cover. Like
Mhm.
we had, or not we had, but we decided to cover all of season one of a brand new league and cover, excuse me, and trying to cover it or cover it in like a decent amount of time, and then talking about a whole new season, and as well as our predictions for the whole season. So it was definitely not what you should expect from like a normal podcast of this, well, of this podcast that we're doing, but like, we just gotta get everything set in stone, do a little review of season one and then a preview of season two, just to make sure we got something to go off of. And um, I know we talked about this. Do this as something to try and like get a bunch of views
Hold on,
and
wait.
stuff
Say
like
one more
that. I'm
time.
doing this because it's like Call of Duty is something I'm very passionate. Oh, I
Yeah.
was just saying this is not something I'm trying to do to get a bunch of views and stuff like that. You know,
Mhm.
like this is something that I'm passionate about, and like I'm coaching a Challengers team. Like Call of Duty is something I think about every day, and you and I have been talking about doing this for like a couple of years now.
Mhm.
So regardless of like how many views this gets or whatever publicity, I think it's a lot of fun, and for sure gonna keep on doing it.
I agree. I agree. And with that, thank you for listening or watching to this
Mm-hmm.
podcast. And we'll catch you on our next podcast, episode 2, where we're going to talk about most likely the
Yeah, the
outcome of
results of the launch
the
weekend.
launch weekend
Mm-hmm.
and kind of our thoughts about launch weekend. So catch us then. Thanks for watching.
All right, thanks guys.